Hi. I thought I would give my thoughts on something that's kind of been a hot topic in Canadian media in recent times, and that's our national anthem. Basically, in the past few months, a veteran Liberal MP by the name of Moray Belanger has proposed a bill. It's called Bill C-210, and the purpose of this bill would be to change one of the lines in our national anthem, O Canada, to use more gender-neutral wording. Basically, one of the lines in our national anthem goes, "In all thy sons command," and this bill that's being proposed would change it to, "In all of us command." The reason for this being that the term thy sons is gender specific, and he thinks the national anthem should move into the 21st century and remove that gender specific line and replace it with a more gender neutral line, "In all of us command." What slightly sensationalizes this story is that Mr. Belanger is dying. He has ALS and his health is deteriorating rapidly. It's already progressed to the point where he's in a wheelchair and he can no longer speak, and it's unknown that if this bill were to pass just as quickly as it can get passed, it's unknown if he would live to see it pass. So that's slightly sensationalized and added a bit of emotion to the whole thing. But yes, this bill has been going through. I'm filming this on June the 11th. Just yesterday, they had a vote in. I'm very poor with political terms, but basically there was a vote in the House of Commons, I think, and basically it was a nearly unanimous vote to pass through this bill. So it's going to go through another vote next week, and then if that vote goes through, then it'll go through some more motions to eventually be passed completely and put into action. I know very little about politics, so I don't know the process that these bills go through to be passed and eventually actually implemented, but that's the best I can describe it. This bill has it's divided Canadians a lot, as these things normally do. You have what I think, based on what I've seen, is the majority that say, yes, this bill is a great idea. It moves our national anthem into the 21st century, remove that gender-specific line, and that's the way it ought to be in this day and age. Then you got the people who don't agree with it because there's a lot of heritage and history attached to our national anthem. It shouldn't be toyed with just for the sake of something which they consider to be not really important. And then you've got the small subset of people who are like, oh, this is going to destroy Canadian culture and nobody cares about our history and all this stuff that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's simply not true. So here's my thoughts on whether or not our national anthem should have this line changed to a new, more gender-neutral line. Do I have any problem with it happening? No. I think it's a fantastic idea, and it would indeed move our anthem into the 21st century. I have no problem with them doing this. I think it's great. But do I think it has to change? Do I think there's a problem if this change doesn't happen? This might surprise some people, but my answer is no. I don't really think there's a problem with our national anthem as it is right now. And the reason for that is because our national anthem was a product of its time. It's a 150-year-old anthem. There's a small asterisk there, which I'll get to near the end of the video. It's a 150-year-old anthem, and it's a product of its time, so it naturally may say some things which we don't agree with anymore. We don't have to agree with you know, the phrase or whatever connotation it might have now, because it was a product of its time. And it does have a lot of history attached to it. And a lot of our heritage goes into the national anthem. So I don't think, the line in All Thy Sons Command doesn't have anything really offensive in it. So I don't think really it has to change. I have a really good example of something completely different that kind of helps make my point here. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the classic Warner Brothers cartoons, the Looney Tunes and the Merry Melodies cartoons that were produced from the 1930s through to the 1960s. And if you ever watch some of those cartoons, you'll definitely see some things that you wouldn't put in a cartoon today. There were many gags in these Warner Brothers cartoons that have some racial connotations in them, that have some really gender-specific connotations, like negative connotations to women, and stuff like that. There's a lot of things in these cartoons that you just would not agree with today, and some of them you might even find shocking. Warner Brothers still distributes these cartoons today in their original form. They haven't edited them. And what I think's really cool is, I just learned about this about a year ago. If you purchase the Looney Tunes Golden Collection DVD set, at the beginning of each of those DVDs, Warner Brothers actually puts a disclaimer in it. And I'll read out the disclaimer here. It says, "The cartoons you are about to see are products of their time. They may depict some of the ethnic and racial prejudices that were commonplace in U.S. society. These depictions were wrong then and they are wrong today. While the following does not represent Warner Brothers' view of today's society, these cartoons are being presented as they were originally created because to do otherwise would be the same as claiming that these prejudices never existed." I thought that was really cool that they do this, because indeed they were products of their time. Back then, people thought it was okay to include these things in these cartoons. It's not because people were assholes in the past or anything, it's just because we thought it was okay, and we learned later that it's not okay. These things are happening still all the time. Geez, I remember when I was a kid, and this was in like early mid-2000s, we used to use the word retard in comical ways. We used to, you'd call someone a retard if they did something stupid. And my generation, we no longer do that. We have since learned that it's not okay to do that. And really, I very rarely ever come across any verbal or written use of the word retard in that way anymore, because it's simply not right. That's something which we didn't think of in the past being 10, 15 years ago, but we know better now. And these Warner Brother cartoons are the same thing, and our national anthem is the same thing. So when I heard about, this bill that proposes to change this line in our national anthem, I thought of this thing with the Warner Brothers cartoons. And that's why I come to the conclusion that our anthem doesn't really need to change. Because it has those words in it doesn't mean we have to agree with them still. It was a product of its time. So while I think it's perfectly fine and still a great idea for it to change, I don't quite think it would have to change. I don't think people would be offended today. Now for the asterisk. Just a couple of days ago, and this is what prompted me to make this video, I learned something really interesting. The line in All Thy Sons Command is not original to O Canada. That line was added to our national anthem in 1913, right before World War I, to reflect the fact that many Canadian men would be going to war. Because of course at that time, women didn't really have much use in a war. Of course, that's changed now. That changed starting in World War II. But yeah, this line is not original to our anthem. Before it was added to our anthem, the line that it replaced was, "Thou dost in us command," which I think is really interesting, because I'm no expert in 19th century English, but the line, "Thou dost in us command," seems to me to be gender neutral. So something I think of is, if we want to change this line in our anthem to be more gender neutral, why don't we revert to the old line, "Thou dost in us command"? I think that'd be the solution to everyone's problems. It's gender neutral and it preserves our history and heritage. I've looked it up and I can't really find any instances of anyone else proposing this, any other politician or anything, which I find really strange. And it's basically an older version of the phrase that, what was the new phrase they're proposing? "In all of us command." But, the phrase "thou dost in us command," I would think would solve every part of this issue. So I think it would be a great idea to go back to the old line. But anyway, that's my thoughts. In the end, whether I actually think this bill is going to pass, I think it will. Support for it has been pretty unanimous so far. I think it'll go all the way, and I think our national anthem will actually change, which I think's great, because it does move our anthem into the 21st century. And I'm really blessed that I get to live in this time and witness all these amazing things happening in the world right now. And God bless this country and the United States and every other country in the world that's, making these really big changes to help, to help move the world into the 21st century, where things like gender minorities can be more accepted and all that stuff. So I think it will pass. I think that's great, but I just wanted to give my thoughts on, whether or not the anthem would need to be changed, but I think it'll happen regardless. So that's my thoughts on the story regarding our national anthem and this line being changed. Let me know what you think about this whole thing, if you agree or disagree, and why, and what you think about my idea, changing it back to "Thou dost in us command." I can't believe no one's thought of that. Maybe I'm just that good, I don't know. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.